Welcome, everyone, to the Up on the Soapbox podcast. This is episode 32, and I say this every time, and I mean it every time. Boy, gosh darn it, do we have a great guest with us today, and I apologize for my colorful language. I'll try to improve on that as we go along today. I'm your co-host. My name is Brett Schaefer. With me today is my other co-host and partner in crime, Dan Piggott. Dan, what'd you have for breakfast today?
I didn't eat breakfast today. I see. There's a question I can answer, right?
I'm
It's those
just trying to think.
open-ended ones I have trouble with. Lunch, I had yogurt and strawberries and blueberries. Is that good?
Okay, well, you gave me more information than I really requested, but
Well,
we'll
what I
take
did
that.
is I took a strawberry and I sliced it into 6 pieces. Okay, and then I put
I'm
I
just
put the
trying to help you
tops
out, bro. I'm just
into
trying
a
to help
cup.
you.
Okay.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Without further ado, because this banter can get old even between us, we're going to introduce our guest for today. With us today is Kirby Hasseman. He had written CEO down on our profile sheet, so I'm just going to go with CEO of Hasseman Marketing. But I do know it's more than just Hasseman Marketing. There's a Hasseman Empire. I do know this because I actually personally had visited at one point a brewery. I visited his marketing office, and I know there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. Kirby, welcome to Up on the Soapbox. We're really happy to have you today.
Oh man, the pleasure's all mine. I'm really excited. I always enjoy catching up with you guys, whether it's in person, whether it's on Zoom, or obviously here on the Soapbox. So the pleasure's all mine. I'm excited.
Well, thank you. It's I'm sure it feels odd to be on the other side of the camera today, but
Yeah.
we're going to take advantage of that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, I know a lot of folks in our industry are familiar with the face, maybe even some of the content you put out, but they may not know your backstory. How'd you get here?
Yeah. So like in the industry, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I think Brett, you and I actually might have a little more in common than most people know. So my family was in the industry. So my dad worked for Shaw Barton, started there, I want to say in like 76 or 77. He was the funny story there is he lived about 45 minutes away from Coshocton, which is where I live. That's where Shaw Barton was. And in the blizzard of 78, he was one of 2 people who made it to work that day. There was, I don't even know how many feet of snow. And so I didn't see him for 3 days because he had to sleep at Shaw Barton. So dad worked there at Shaw Barton. And then my mom ended up being a salesperson for Shaw Barton, then JII. Then my wife was a salesperson. And so I kind of grew up around the industry, not at all thinking I never wanted to be in it, but it wasn't, I was always intrigued by it. But I kind of went my own path for a couple of years and then came back, honestly, because I kept with my wife. My wife was a salesperson with JI. And what I loved is I was working 60, 80 hours a week in a corporate communications job. And I loved that job. But, you know, I made what I made, right? And what I always admired about my wife is that anytime we were in a pinch where we were like, yeah, we need some more money, she would just start working harder. And of course, sales would follow and then we'd make more money. And the idea of being able to work harder and make more money appealed to me so much that I left the salary, the benefits, the daycare, on-site daycare, the whole 9 yards. I left there to go straight commission into the industry. And it went pretty well. And then we've kind of evolved. So obviously we're still a promotional products distributor. That's probably 85% of our top line revenue, but we do video production, social media, digital marketing. We do in-house print, all that stuff. So we've become a little bit more of an agency model. And so that's where we land today.
What was the first foray into promotional products? Was it your own company or did you take a job with a different firm first?
No, great question. So so for about 9 months, so my wife was selling for JI. I actually went to Vernon for about 9 months. And then just because we were trying to sort of keep things separate. And then I finally decided that was silly. So I came over to JI and Amy and I sold as a team. Then JI was purchased by Lee Wayne. I saw the soapbox with Shannon Laredo where she was talking about all of these acquisitions. I didn't have quite that many. But Lee Wayne bought JI. And I was there for Lee Wayne is Halo, for those who don't know but had a great run at Halo. They treated me great. And I finally just said, look, I want to try and do this on my own. And at that point, I had another video production person in-house. I had an assistant. So I had sort of the human infrastructure that I think a lot of salespeople don't have when they want to strike out on their own. And so we did that, I want to say in 2007, 2008. And it's just kind of grown from there.
Let's talk about the entrepreneurial side. You're what I would consider a serial entrepreneur, and it seems like you may be married to one as well, and you might even have one a child that is also following in those footsteps. Is that
Yeah.
genetic? How does that come to be? Where do you get that drive?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of us who I love starting businesses. Business is my hobby. So like my wife is certainly a great operator and is certainly entrepreneurial as well, but she can shut it off. I always admire that. Like I can't. Like I'm like she has to say, Kirby, stop talking about ideas. I don't want to hear any more today. And so yeah, we have the marketing company. Hasseman Properties is a real estate sort of company that my wife manages. Skylar, my oldest, just started working for us about a year or so ago, doing inside sales. And then Jade, the youngest, started her own business. She's 19, she's 20. So she does facial. She's an esthetician, all that sort of thing. So where does it come from? I really do. I don't know if you call it genetics or whatever, but it is truly one of those things that I said. I started my first business at 8 years old. And so it's something that it just always came very naturally to me. The joke I told, it's a true story. I started a bike repair business when I was 8. And one of the things I realized is I could sell. Because within the first day, and this is of course pre-Facebook and all that stuff, I started knocking on doors and see if anybody needed their bike fixed. And so within the first day, I had my first client. We brought the bike back to my parents' garage, and I realized something really important. I do not know how to fix bikes. And so, so it quickly became a bike washing business. Luckily, the person was kind enough to not worry about that. They were just trying to be nice. But at a very early age, that's something that came very naturally to me. And I think that it's one of the things I say about public education is I think sometimes it's not training us to think that way. That's just not what it's set up to do. And so I think when you have those entrepreneurial tendencies, we have to spend time with our culture building that up, letting people do it.
And you obviously had the spunk, there's that whatever that is, that drive that you weren't afraid to knock on doors and to do that sort of thing. But my question, and I also wanted to go down the entrepreneurial sort of path with you as well today, but I mean, so you've started several businesses. What should everyone know before they begin to start a business, right? What is the best advice you can give them? Maybe something they hadn't thought of, and or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think that probably the best advice, and I've talked about this a lot, is if you don't know your numbers, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And I say that I'm not the best numbers guy. I have historically not been. It's something I had to really work at. I was the sales guy. I was the marketing guy, right? And so the problem you get yourself into when you have my personality is that you always think you can outsell every problem, right? And so to a degree, that's good because you can increase sales. But the problem is if you have a crappy business and you sell more of it, all you're doing is creating a bigger problem. And if you don't understand your margin, you don't understand your numbers, you don't understand how to pay the bills, selling more doesn't solve your problems. It's just often makes them bigger. And one of the big steps I've made in the last 10 years is really working to understand the numbers a lot better so that when I'm growing, I know that I'm growing profitably. And I guess the other lesson is that failure is not death, right? Like I think the thing that holds so many people back is that they're like, well, but what if it doesn't work? And my response is, so what? Like you're not going to die from it, right? Like, so I think that we've been really conditioned to, that we've got to pass the test. We got to follow the rules. We got to wait to ask for permission. And I think that that's all bullshit. I really do. I think that at the end of the day, the most interesting changes in our world have come from people who didn't wait for permission. They decided that they wanted to do something and they went and did it, despite what some of their most best intentioned loved ones told them. Yeah. And so, go get it.
And it also falls in line a little bit. What you're alluding to is, you learn from failures as well, right? You can, in fact, you probably learn more from the things that don't go well than you do the ones that go swimmingly, right? I mean, there's lessons in this thing.
Yeah, it's almost to a point where it's cliche, right? Like, because we hear that, right? We hear that and we say, oh, we all learn from failure, but then we all avoid it, right? Like, so there's a great book. I think his name was Ryan Leake. It's called Chasing Failure. And I think that there's the idea that what would you do if A, you couldn't fail, or B, you didn't give a damn? And I think we would all try different things. We talk ourselves out of a lot of things that we would really, really love to do, and we don't ever try. And the concept around this book was that he was a college basketball player, always wanted to play in the NBA, but he was at a smaller school, didn't get drafted. So all of a sudden he was 28 and he'd never even taken a swing. And so he reached out to a couple NBA teams, and by God, they emailed him back and he got a tryout, and he didn't make the team. But as he was trying out, he was like, man, chasing failure took me way farther than chasing success ever did.
Interesting. I like the title. So let's talk a little bit about some of your activities outside of the promo space. And it's my understanding you were very involved civically with your community, Conshohocken, Ohio, the booming metropolis thereof.
Yeah.
And talk to us a little bit about what you do in terms of your civics involvement, and how that might relate to your business endeavors.
Sure. Yeah. So, I think, I grew up in Conshohocken, and like a lot of kids who grew up in a small town, I wanted nothing more than to leave. Right. Like I said, when I was 18, I wanted to win Wimbledon and leave my hometown. Those are the two things I wanted to do. Right. And
did you chase that Wimbledon dream?
Did you send them an email?
Yeah.
I didn't. They didn't let me play. I did play. I played tennis in college, so that was sort of how I sort of chased that. And then, but what I would say is, once you become an adult and you settle in a smaller area, and you can certainly have an impact in a bigger area. But it is actually kind of mind blowing if you lean into a small community, how much of an impact you can really make. It occurred to me really early on where there was in our area, there was a chamber, there was a port authority, kind of economic development, and convention and visitors, so visitors bureau, and they were all coming together into one building. And I was on one of those boards, and the two boards came together, and one was coming in, one was going out, and we were all talking about what they should name the building. And, a bunch of ideas had thrown out, and I'm literally throwing my backpack on, getting ready to leave. And I was like, well, this is economic development, but this isn't. This is blah, blah, blah. I said, really, it's all about progress. It's really, call it the Progress Center. And I left. And 2 weeks later, I was driving down the road watching them put the sign on the building, and it said Progress Center. And I was like, shit, I got to watch what I say. But I say that to say, when you lean in, you really do have the ability to have a positive impact wherever you are. And I think when I first started doing that, I didn't have any money. I didn't have quarters to rub together, but I would sit in, I would, pick up trash. I would do the, time, treasure, and talent, right? I don't know that I had talent, and I definitely didn't have treasure, but I had time, and I could throw it at it. And when you do that over and over again, your influence tends to go up, because the decisions in the world are made by those who are there, right? And I can only honestly say that I haven't done that to gain business, but does it gain us business? Of course, because we're in the room when they're deciding what they want to do, whatever organization wants to do. And so when I give 2 cents, that people tend to say, oh, okay, cool. Well, can you guys do that for us? And so I think that when you give authentically and you're not trying to game the system, then I think it builds your credibility with your local audience, and then it does follow to business. But yeah, in answer to your question, I mean, I've been involved I'm president of the chamber right now. I've been involved with the CVB. I've been, you name an organization, usually either Amy or I have been a part of it, because it's something that we're passionate about.
So on the volunteer level, there's tangible takeaways from giving your time. There definitely is. You can mark it in many different ways, from friendships made to influence to business earned and whatnot. So I want to switch gears here a little bit, but it relates to this discussion, to talk about your content generation. You are, without a doubt, one of the most prolific content generators that I know. Inside this industry, outside this industry, you're consistent, you're creative, you're delivering different messages all the time. What do you get out of that? Number one. And what's the why?
Yeah. So I think that's an ever evolving answer. So I'll start with the beginning. What do I get out of it? So I'll never forget when I first started doing Delivering Marketing Joy, which is the weekly web show where I interview people. That's kind of probably one of the first things in the industry or outside the industry I was known for. Probably within the first 10 episodes, I interviewed Roger Burnett. Roger's a great guy. And at the time, the format of the show was I'd ask 3 questions and someone would ask me a question. And so his question was, why are you doing this? What do you hope to gain? What's the ROI? And I remember saying, I don't know what the ROI is yet. I just know it's the right thing to do. And so that was really what spurred me to start. Here's what happened is that in our industry, so often, and this was totally unintentional. I'd love to tell you I masterminded this, but it was an accident. Is in our industry, I think so many times people call us 2 weeks before an event and say, oh shit, I forgot to order pens. Can you get them in time? Can we get me umbrellas? Can you get me whatever, right? And, of course, I took those calls and I took that business as best I could. What changed when I started being consistent in my content generation is that they called me way farther in advance. They called me and said, hey, I've got an event coming up in 6 months. Can you help us create it? They stopped viewing me as a salesperson and they started viewing me as a marketing expert. That's what happened. Like, again, I'd love to tell you that was my master plan. I just knew it was the right thing to do. And I stuck with it, even though there wasn't tangible evidence in the beginning to prove that. And it took me a while, even before those calls were happening. I was like, wonder why they're calling me. But that's what happened is I started being viewed differently because of that consistency and because of that content generation.
Just before Dan jumps in here, and I think he's got more to ask, but what's the breakdown between content you generate for the industry versus outside the industry? Because I know you're very active with generating content for your community as well. I don't know if it goes beyond that, but how do you break that down?
It's a great question. I started a podcast called Coshocton Conversations. I'm much less consistent with that one, mainly because of guests. Like I would do it more often because it's pretty easy for me. But I would say what I'm trying to do right now is to get hyper focused on the audience I want to serve. And I say that to say that much like a lot of entrepreneurs like me, as I'm looking at the next shiny thing, like, oh, I want to do a podcast about that. I want to write about that. I want to do this. And I enjoy doing it. So especially in the beginning, it's easy to start. But what I need to do, and the advice I'd give anybody, is that figuring out exactly what you want to be known for, figuring out exactly the audience you want to serve. And I think literally in the last week, I've been trying to say, look, I want to be known as someone who can help businesses start and grow joyfully. And I think once I focus in on that, it helps me not chase things that are outside of that, right? Because I think that our industry is made up of entrepreneurs and marketers. And I want to serve entrepreneurs and marketers. And so the content I create makes sense in the industry, but it should make sense for outside of the industry as well.
Joyfully. I love it. I mean, it's kind of a unique angle. I mean, it ties into your podcast as well, but that's your word. That's a good word to have. I'll tell you that.
Thanks, man.
So the last kind of topic I want to talk with you about and get your impressions are, you talk to a lot of promotional products professionals, right? So you have people coming through, you're connected to these people. What are the trends right now? If you're looking, give me 1 or 2 of the common threads and trends that you see developing right now. Not so much the complaints of supply chain. Okay, we all know but is there anything shaping the industry right now on a consistent basis that you either see or foresee?
Yeah, I think a couple things, and I don't know that these are brand new trends that if people go, oh my God, I hadn't thought of that, they probably have. But I would say that the continuing influx of brands in our industry, I think driven by end users, but really I think, the suppliers in our space have started to understand and gone, okay, if I can partner with this retail brand and make it make sense, that will be great. And I think that in a world where more and more the end user has grown up idolizing those brands. I mean, I don't know that even like Gen Xers were quite as enamored. It's wasn't like we didn't appreciate brands, but I don't know if it's quite as much as it is today. And so I think the proliferation of brands in our industry is a trend that I see continuing. The other one is, this isn't a complaint about the supply chain, but the reality of it is, as suppliers introduce me to a new product line. I had this happen yesterday. We had a supplier in this office yesterday, and they said, look, we're rolling out this new line of apparel. Cool. What's the stock? And I think that at this point, that's not a complaint.
No, but it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Let's just address it so that I know what I'm going with. And I think that and maybe this is the trend out of that, is I think the thing that we did pretty well last year is that we just didn't show shit we weren't sure was as in stock as we could guarantee that it was. Like literally, if people called and said, hey, can we get this pen? My answer was probably not.
Yeah.
Can I get you a pen that will work exactly like, yes, I'll take a look for that pen, but let's just set the stage that with stock, supply chain, blah, 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 blah. Can you get me a t-shirt in a week? No, you didn't look. Sure didn't. Like, because so I think that one of the trends is, look, we just need to play the hand we're dealt right now. And that is, as I told clients right after Christmas, supply chain didn't get fixed with Santa Claus, right? Like it's going to take a little bit of time. So if we know that, I think the best suppliers and distributors are saying, okay, cool. So what can we do effectively and smartly for our end users and still get them what they need for their event and solve the problem? Because again, it comes back to not, can you get this pen? It's what human behavior are you trying to affect? And what is your budget to do so? Because that's what we can do.
It's probably, you're right. It's probably conversation that should have been at the forefront forever,
right?
But now is forced to be a component of every conversation you have.
Yeah.
So
and it should be, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, so everybody get your Christmas hoodie orders on back order right now. So hopefully they'll be ready by Christmas 2023.
Yeah.
Kirby Hasseman, CEO of Hasseman Marketing. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I always enjoy our conversations in person, virtually, on the phone. However, I can get a few minutes of your time. I appreciate it, man. And thank you for being an early adopter of the Soapbox platform. We really enjoyed having you there, and we look forward to bringing you back here in the near future.
Yeah, you guys have done an amazing job. I really love what you guys are doing at the Soapbox. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.